Look, you've probably been exactly here before. You've deleted your browser history, you've looked in the mirror, promised yourself never again, and you know what? You genuinely meant it. You felt deeply disgusted with yourself. But then, an hour later, or maybe a day later, you find yourself right back in the exact same relentless loop. Well, I want to speak directly to you right now. The goal of this explainer is absolutely not to offer you a lecture on morals. We are completely stripping away the shame right here, right now. Instead, what we're going to do today is provide a technical, scientific breakdown of exactly why your brain is currently winning a war against your own will. This is a direct, deep dive confrontation with pornography and masturbation addiction, and we are going to treat it strictly as the biological hacking that it is. Okay, let's quickly dive right into our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The relentless cycle. 2. The 250% dopamine hijack. 3. Why willpower always fails. 4. Your emergency reset toolkit. And 5. The 90-day reconstruction. Starting with section 1, the relentless cycle, or the anatomy of the urge. So, we have to start by looking at the very first phase of a relapse, and you know it well. It literally always starts incredibly small. It's a passing thought, a fleeting memory, or maybe a sudden, almost innocent curiosity about a specific actress or a certain scene you once saw. When that thought hits, you might honestly ask yourself, why can't I just say no and move on? Just think about the hours of internal chaos that follow. Think about that intense physical restlessness you feel when you actually try to resist it. It's not just a passing craving, is it? It becomes this all-consuming physical tension. So why does that happen? Well, it happens because of what your brain starts doing the exact moment you try to put up a wall. This is exactly what you're up against, your inner negotiator. This is literally your own brain actively trying to trick you into dropping your defenses. It starts bargaining with your logic. It whispers things like, just one time, or just one video to relax, or the absolute classic, tomorrow we'll start the streak for real. Let's be clear, this isn't a lack of discipline. It is your brain running a highly sophisticated negotiation program designed specifically to bypass your logical defenses. And when that inner negotiator fails, when you still try to say no, your brain escalates the attack. It weaponizes what we call visual loops. Your brain just starts playing these high-definition mental movies of old scenes. It creates this relentless curiosity itch that can linger for up to 5 full hours. It comes back every 10 minutes. It manifests as a literal physical burning in your chest and this intense restlessness in your hands. You are physically trapped in a loop. Which brings us to section 2, the 250% dopamine hijack, the chemical explosion. We really need to transition now into the shocking neurological reality of why this specific urge feels completely impossible to ignore. We have to look at the massive chemical explosion happening inside your head that makes this addiction harder to quit than almost anything else. Because here's the hard science. When you view pornography, it triggers an unprecedented 250% spike in dopamine in your brain. This is a massive, incredibly unnatural tidal wave of the exact neurochemical responsible for desire, motivation, and reward. Let's put that massive number into perspective, just to see what we're really dealing with. When you eat a genuinely great meal, your dopamine spikes about 50%. During a natural, real-life, intimate encounter, it spikes around 100%. But pornography? That delivers a 250% spike. Your brain simply wasn't built by evolution to survive a hit that massive. It completely dwarfs natural encounters and basically rewires what your brain even perceives as rewarding. And because your brain wasn't built for 250% overload, it has to defend itself. To literally survive the flood, it shuts down its own dopamine receptors. This results in what we call brain fog. So when you feel numb, when you feel tired, and you completely lose interest in your real-life goals and hobbies after a relapse, listen to me, you are not being lazy. You are experiencing a profound state of chemical drain. Your receptors have shut down to protect you, leaving you essentially chemically exhausted. Let's move to section 3, why willpower always fails, the battery drain. This brings us to the tragic flaw in how most men try to fight this battle. They rely entirely on mental strength. They just grit their teeth and try to outwill the urge, especially when they're stressed out or tired at the end of the day. But the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the two parts of the brain that are at war. Your prefrontal cortex, that's the part that handles logic and willpower. Think of it exactly like a battery on your smartphone. It depletes throughout the day and it simply runs out at night. On the other side is your amygdala, the primal addiction center. When you're tired or stressed, your logical prefrontal cortex goes offline, and the amygdala takes over. So it is an entirely unfair fight. Your logic is fast asleep, but the addiction center, it is wide awake. As this quote brilliantly summarizes, fighting the urge with sheer strength is like fighting a flood with a paper shield. Because you're fighting powerful neurochemicals and not some lack of morals, you have to completely abandon the idea of using willpower alone. You cannot think your way out of a chemical flood. You literally must use biology to fight biology. So, how do we do that? Section 4, your emergency reset toolkit, the biological overrides. When that 5-hour visual loop is stuck in your head and the physical burning in your chest is intense, you need biological overrides. You need hard interventions that violently snap the brain out of its loop. We have 3 main physical circuit breakers. But honestly, before we even trigger the first 2, we have to talk about the third one on the list, the environmental exit. This is an absolute necessity. You cannot win this fight sitting in the exact same chair or lying in the exact same bed where you usually relapse. The environment itself is a trigger. You must physically stand up and move your body to a completely different room to break that initial autopilot sequence. Okay, once you're out of the room, you use the thermal shock, also known as the ice cube reset. You go straight to the sink and splash ice-cold water directly onto your face. Or you grab an ice cube and you hold it tightly in your hand until that freezing cold is absolutely the only thing you can think about. What this does is trigger a hardwired biological response called the mammalian dive reflex. It instantly forces your heart rate to drop and fundamentally shifts your nervous system, literally killing the chemical urge right in its tracks. Next up is the AI logic check, and this one is a real game changer. When you're alone and that urge hits, open up an AI like ChatGPT. Start typing out exactly what you're feeling and explaining your craving to the AI. Why? Because the actual mechanical act of taking an abstract primal feeling and having to translate it into structured written words biologically forces your prefrontal cortex, your logical brain, to boot back up and turn back on. By explaining the urge logically, you naturally shut down the amygdala's primal craving. And finally, Section 5, the 90-day reconstruction, or reclaiming your life. Now that you have your physical circuit breakers to actually survive the immediate battles, we need to set some realistic expectations for the broader war. What is the actual prognosis for the physical healing of your brain over these coming months? Well, let's walk through this timeline. Days 1 through 7? Yeah, they are the hardest. Your brain is going to absolutely scream for its 250% dopamine hit. It'll be agonizing, and you're going to need to rely heavily on your emergency toolkit. But if you push through to day 21, you will feel that deep autopilot habit actually begin to weaken. You just won't automatically reach for the screen anymore. And by day 90, you hit the full reset. By this point, your brain has physically pruned away the old addiction pathways and successfully regrown new dopamine receptors. Your brain structurally heals. Look, the pain of those first few weeks, that is just the toll you pay for the freedom you are fighting for. Because eventually, the visual loops will stop. The brain fog that has kept you feeling numb and totally unmotivated will finally clear. You're going to reclaim your time, your energy, and your focus. So I want to leave you with this final, serious thought to consider. Once the fog has fully lifted and you have completely taken the steering wheel back from your biology, what exactly are you going to do with your reclaimed life?